Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. 3 victories for the Premier League sides in the Champions League. Very straightforward for Liverpool in Marseille and Newcastle at home to PSV. While Chelsea made heavy weather of Pafos, it all leaves 5 English sides in the top 8, with City only outside it on goal difference. Doesn't feel spectacular for Europe's elite competition, especially given of those 6, only Arsenal are having a brilliant season locally. Nevertheless, we'll discuss Marseille's lack of a draft excluder, another great goal from Harvey Barnes, and what we're learning from Liam Rosenior so far. We'll round up the other results before looking ahead to the Premier League weekend. Arsenal-Liverpool jumps off the page, slots men one of only 2 sides to beat the Gunners this season. Then Paul Watson can do some Greenland. Lars can do a Bodo Glimt minute too. We'll answer your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. Well, you know 2 of the panel. Welcome, Lars Sivertsen. Hello.
Hello, Max.
Hello, Paul Watson from the Sweeper Pod.
Hi, Max.
And there was no bit in the intro for you, Johnny Liew. I mean, there was a bit, but I took it out because I didn't quite understand it. I thought we might not have time for it, but we might have time for it. But I didn't put it in the intro. I apologise.
Morning, Max.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, then with 1 game to go in the Champions League, all the Premier League sides are in good positions. Arsenal are through, 100% record top. Liverpool have 15 points. A point at home to Karabag will probably be enough to get them into the top 8. If Spurs win at Frankfurt, who are out, they'll get in the top 8. Newcastle do need a win at PSG to get into the top 8, so that's not straightforward. A win at Napoli for Chelsea will probably get them in the top 8, and Man City will probably be in the top 8 if they beat Galatasaray. So it doesn't mean, Johnny, that a Premier League side are going to win this competition, but how should we feel about this kind of, inverted commas, domination?
Well, it's an unbelievable night for the coefficient. Not a classic night for the competition, not a classic night in terms of drama, but the coefficient is being hoisted around the room on the shoulders of its teammates. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously just it's a recurring theme. I think it's one that we talked about on this pod before. That is talked about. I think a lot of the corridors of power and the boardrooms of European football. That you see. So we'll come to PSV later, but PSV are a team that haven't lost away from home in 10 months. They're 16 points clear of the Eredivisie, and Newcastle were not just better than them, but really kind of humiliatingly better than them. We've seen this again and again. The Champions League is making Tottenham look quite good, which we know that they're not. So I think that there is the standard of the Premier League in this competition, I think, is finally a bit of a product of the financial dominance that the league has enjoyed for quite some years.
Is it hypocritical, Lars, to criticise like the power of the Premier League when that is our bread and butter, or can we have our cake and our bread and butter?
I mean, I think there are separate discussions almost. I mean, criticize. It's the reality of the situation. This is a league where the teams have much more money than everyone else. I mean, Newcastle's, off the top of my head, I'd say Newcastle's wage bill is probably about 3 times what PSV's is. I can Google that, but I'm pretty sure it's something like that. And so you would expect them to win, and it's not always going to be the case. There are like market inefficiencies, as people would call them, and you'll have exceptions. We had a glorious one last night, but I think whenever an English team beats a team from one of the other leagues in Europe, then that's more of a sort of dog bites man than man bites dog kind of story. The real shock really was that PSV went away to Liverpool and won. I mean, that was Liverpool mid-spiral. And because PSV are coached by Peter Bosz, who for a long period of time was this kind of pan-European banter figure, because he is kind of like a Dutch Ange Postecoglou in the sense that he's a genuine like football romantic. And his teams have often been good to watch, but often fully chaotic at the back. I mean, Dortmund and Leverkusen and Lyon fans will testify to this. And he's gone back to Holland, and as you've said, they're doing phenomenally well in the league. But you are kind of expecting them to come unstuck when they go abroad to the big boys in the Champions League. So for them to rock up at Anfield and thump Liverpool was a baffling state of affairs. And I was even texting some friends yesterday, like when they spontaneously gave away 2 goals for no reason against Newcastle. I was like, there we go. That's the Peter Bosz we know and love. Normality has been restored, which is a little mean to him. He's probably on a pretty good sort of redemption arc with him running away with the Eredivisie and all of that. But it wasn't completely unexpected put that way. And I think, actually, having rambled on, I want to add one more point. I do think there are quite a few European teams who struggle more with Newcastle than some of the English teams do. because Newcastle are a very physical team. They're a very direct team. They're a very intense team, and they are physical in a way that a lot of. I mean, this is a cliche, but I'm sorry, it's true. They are physical in a way that a lot of the continental teams don't enjoy playing against. Bodø Glimt had much more trouble with Tottenham in the Europa League last year because they actually just thrashed them physically. They had a real, like, when they lost badly to Spurs in the Europa League last year, they actually changed the way they trained on the back of it because they were so outmatched physically over
they
those
do
2
gladiators
legs.
What did they do?
No, but they were, like, an example, their centre halves were like not used to the striker just bashing into them like before the ball even gets there when there's a high ball coming up. Like, there was a level of physicality to Tottenham's play that they were just like, what is happening here? And we're going to actually have to train differently and play differently if we're going to hold our own against these European teams. And I think while Newcastle are not having the best of seasons in the Premier League, they have a lot of, like, intensity. There's a lot of guys who run. There's a lot of, like, powerful dudes in there. And I think PSV are probably one of the European teams who are not super well equipped to deal with that.
Paul, we're sort of this is the second of the Swiss model 36 team league. And if you look at, like, the number of teams that could get in the top 8, I think you could probably, I haven't checked all the permutations, but like Dortmund have 11 points. If they win, they have 14. That could possibly get them into 8. So you've got a lot of teams going for that. At the bottom, I suppose last year there were some big sides that were in jeopardy. I think PSG and Man City might have been in jeopardy at the end. It's not quite the case, but still you've got all the way down to Ajax in 32nd that could make it into the playoffs. So does year 2, like, that gives us 2 years to look at, make you feel like this is working or not?
It's a really good question. And here I have to battle my old man yells at cloud instincts, because I have to admit, I miss the old format in terms of just knowing where you stand, in terms of the narrative and having teams coming back to play against each other a second time. I do miss the old format. I also have just an instinctive thing that when I see a team listed as being in 26th place or 33rd, but my brain just will not compute. It's like I've been transported into a sport I don't understand. Or
yeah,
I would think, Paul, that your instinct would be that you want to manage them somehow.
Well, if the Karabakh job comes up, but yeah, this is the thing, right? Instinctively, I take against this format, but I do have to admit it does maintain the drama and it maintains the opportunity for teams to get in or out of contention up until the very end. So I'm really torn. I can't say whether I like this or don't like it. I'm still instinctively against it, and I'm trying to work out which bit of that is just me rejecting all attempts at change in football.
Sure, of course. I mean, yeah, but I guess, Johnny, like, it does lead to this drama on the final day, but it doesn't mean it's been that dramatic up to that point. I think there have probably been good nights, and last night wasn't that fascinating. So maybe this is real recency bias. There were really interesting games and results the night before. So maybe that's just why I wanted to go down this road before we talked about the games.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really looked at the table, the whole competition. I looked at it this morning before coming on, because it's really hard to contextualize. It's like, well, just 4 points separating the middle 19 there. It feels unwieldy. So I think there's been plenty of interest in the games themselves, but the whole product still, I think, suffers from context. There's such a deluge of stuff every night. Most of it obviously mediated through social feeds, that it's hard to get a grip on the competition as a whole. I mean, maybe that's the point. Maybe NFL fans don't know what's going on in the Conference West, Conference East. They're just looking out for their team and they don't conceptualize the thing as a whole. But it all does lead to this 18 game chaos next week, which I think is still too many. I think it feels like a game show. It feels more like a television game show.
Speak for yourself. I'm on the pod on the next day. Good God, that's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, yeah. I know what you mean. Well, I mean, I think you can probably feel both, right? One is, well, this is quite fun because the as it stands table is sort of ridiculous every 5 minutes. At the same time, this is too many football. Football wasn't designed to watch 9 games or 18 games at the same time, or whatever it is. Lars, you want to come in?
I mean. The question of has it been a success? I guess we have to define success, because I've I have this. I think everything these sporting authorities do. I assume it's going to be stupid until proven otherwise, because that just seems to be the way.
Mm-hmm.
I have found myself mostly enjoying the football the 2 years it's been on. There's been very few match days or weeks that have been just a complete dud and there were no games I enjoyed and everything was boring. There's always been something. And I am enjoying the greater variation of matchups. I think the way the groups worked before with the 4-team groups, you had 2 pretty strong teams in each group, one medium and one sort of just happy to be there. And that you ended up with quite a lot of lopsided games, and the games between the 2 teams that were good in each group tended to be just kind of, we're happy to take a draw here. They weren't all that dramatic. So it was a structural problem with those groups, I will concede. So in terms of enjoying the football, yes. But also, I also haven't looked at the table. I think this idea of making the table super exciting, I feel like that isn't really hitting home. But we are in a situation where Ajax are 32nd and could still qualify, which is at any point in time where the team that's 32nd in the league could still get somewhere. That's an interesting situation to be in, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Let's talk about the Liverpool win then. It was comfortable for them, wasn't it? I mean, the first goal, Paul, the absent draft excluder and the unison with which the wall jump is a thing of beauty. And it's really clever from Szoboszlai, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've seen this goal quite a few times now. And every time I see it, it doesn't look like it should go in. It just doesn't look like a hard struck free kick that goes in. But it, as he said, he was very quick to point out how clever he had been afterwards. He saw they didn't have the draft excluder in. He thought, I'm going to put it under. He did, and it was brilliantly taken. He kind of saw the keeper was too far over. So it's a brilliant free kick. And as you say, this Marseille game, I actually thought this was going to be a really difficult game for Liverpool. It looked daunting on paper. Marseille doing pretty well in Ligue 1. They're the top scorers in Ligue 1. Not a nice place to go, particularly. Liverpool not looking very good at all for quite a while. So it was quite kind of alarming almost how easily really Liverpool won this. There were maybe a couple of moments where Alisson made really good saves. He made a couple of great saves to deny Pavard once and to deny Greenwood once. He made some really good saves. But really, Liverpool could have even won this more convincingly. And I think, tying into that conversation we had about the disparity between different leagues, it was another one to put in that column because, by all rights, Liverpool should have struggled here, and they really didn't. They played excellently.
The draft excluder is interesting, isn't it, Johnny? Because it's sort of like, what is it like? Home insurance, or it's like you never notice you need it. You think it's bullshit until
they unticked a box, Max.
Yeah,
they had a box that's always ticked, and they were like, "Oh, just take that one off."
Yeah. It's that. When it obviously once one's there, no one can ever try this. So it really does. It does its job. I'm not sure the point I'm trying to make.
Do you know what they call the draft excluder in France? Le crocodile. The crocodile.
Yes.
That's really nice.
I love that.
And obviously it is an interesting tactic. I want to read like a 4,000 word athletic long read on how a coach chooses the draft excluder. How do you choose the player to perform that role? Do you do it on length? Do you do it on girth? Is it
I think it is length, isn't it? It is length, but I think what I quite like it's quite nice when you see somebody like the quality. I want to see the best ever player to have been the draft excluder, or the most.
I think Messi has been there. I believe Messi has been in there. I think so.
There you go. That's great that you've put Lionel Messi literally on the floor, lying down. You've got Messi, and you're just like, that's where you put him.
But he's got great range for a small man.
That is true. Yeah, a big wingspan, hasn't he? What did you make of the Liverpool performance, Johnny?
I thought it was very, very good. I think Slot has had there's been a lot of disrespect towards Arne Slot recently. I think a lot of it from Liverpool fans actually, and some of it from the media, which increasingly seems to take its cue from the online world in terms of trying to capture snackable content and gotcha moments. So he gets asked about Alonso, Xabi Alonso before the game. And he gets asked, I think, by TNT whether he needs to prove something to Liverpool fans, and he quite rightly says, "I've been in the job for 18 months and won one title, so I think I'm doing okay." But to the doubters, this was actually a really, really smart tactical performance by them. He knows how De Zerbi is going to set up Marseille. He gives them the ball. I think they have something like 39% possession in the second half. and he waits for Marseille to kind of to try and load up to double up on the flanks. He plays that diamond or sort of a box of four in midfield, and they just keep getting through the lines. They keep having a man spare in between the lines. Szoboszlai and Gravenberch, and Wirtz just slipping in and creating so many chances. So I think it is obviously the sort of style the style of opponent that you couldn't choose a better style to suit Liverpool away from home in Europe. But the way they executed it, I thought was really, really encouraging.
I did think that formation was super interesting, and it left me wondering, like, is this something we're going to do going forward? Because if you look at the Liverpool squad and you think of, like, you would like to find a way of playing with two strikers because you have Ekitike, and for now you have Salah, who you want closer to goal, and you don't want him having to track any fullbacks. And in the long run, you want to find a way where both Ekitike and Isak can play together. You want to find a way where Wirtz can play in quite a central role, but you still have enough midfielders in there that doesn't become like a weakness. You have very, very attacking fullbacks who you would like to see released up the flank. So there's a lot of things that you need the Liverpool system to be that seems to be solved by this sort of the 4-2-2-2, the box midfield thing. But it's also not a formation that you see successfully applied very often by a lot of clubs. I don't know why that is. Leipzig have played like that a fair bit. Rangnick famously tried it at United without a lot of success. Very interesting to see if that's something that continues, because so far it's a lot of I think Slot has kind of wrestled a little bit with all these new players and all these new components he has, and to find out what's actually the best system for all of them, and that seemed quite logical yesterday.
Might be interesting to see against Arsenal, won't it? And look, Florian Wirtz, you can, as soon as he got here, Paul, you could tell he was really good, even if he wasn't doing anything. And now he's good and is doing stuff.
Yeah, he's a good example for just sticking by players who will come good, and just keeping on saying, yeah, but wait, he is going to come good, because he has massively come good, and Marseille could not deal with him at all. Yeah, like a little note on Marseille as well. Marseille are a weird team. I've seen a bit of Marseille, and you just never have any idea which Marseille you're going to get. I don't know whether this is a fair test of them for the reasons we've outlined. This was a very different kind of match for them, but it seems like Marseille blow hot and cold so frequently that De Zerbi himself doesn't really seem to have any idea what's going to happen. He's a very emotional guy, De Zerbi. I saw him do a press conference where he was effectively in tears earlier in the season, because he said it. I think he said, I cried in the dressing room. I think it's just because he doesn't understand how this team can be so good one week and so poor the next. And yeah, I still don't know what I'm getting anytime I watch Marseille, which does make them very entertaining to watch, especially because they are generally very good going forward and not always so solid at the back.
Interesting that De Zerbi's been sort of linked to Manchester United, amongst others, and a return to the Premier League. There was the Beatles tifo was quite exceptional from Marseille. These seem like, fair play to the people that make them, because it feels like the sort of thing a whole town need to do on record breakers. They're just enormous. And Steven Gerrard did the Davos TNT goal show double. Probably best that he does it. I was trying to think, could you have a Scott Bessent, Dave Bessent crossover? Could that work? Maybe they could. Not Dave Bessent isn't doing a lot of punditry, but I wouldn't mind seeing him in the US administration. Newcastle PSV. Look, we've talked about this quite a lot, but given, Johnny, that they've got PSG away last game, and given that PSV hammered Liverpool at Anfield, this does feel like a significant victory for them.
Yeah, just on paper, I guess to a neutral, it looks like a. You look at the fixture and think, okay, well, there's not too much there. But I think if you're a Newcastle fan, this stage of this part of the European journey still feels quite kind of giddy and exciting. They don't take these European nights for granted yet, and you could tell there was a real noise and intensity to them. You contrast that with Stamford Bridge, for example, where you would think they would be pretty up for that, but Stamford Bridge is rarely up for anything these days. So PSV, I think the big difference between this and the Liverpool game was that at Anfield they were basically able to take control of the game. They were basically able to seize control of it early on, and here it was basically the very opposite. I have to admit, I don't watch a huge amount of them in the Eredivisie, but they're 16 points clear, and I doubt they've been they've been tested like this. I doubt that they've had this much kind of pressure put on them, and I think that it shows in those defensive mistakes that let Gordon and Wisser in for the opening 2 goals. You know, there's a really high line there. Obviously, Bosch has them playing a really high line, but it didn't seem to me that like there was enough pressure at the other end of the pitch. So Newcastle were just able to keep playing through them again and again, and it probably could have been more. I don't think 3-0 flattered them. I think the injury to Bruno Guimaraes is a bit of a worry. Miley comes into Lewis Miley comes in to deputise for him, but Joe Linton had a really good game. So I think it really sets up the last game really really nicely for Newcastle, because I think if they beat PSG, there's a bit of a revenge mission there, from how how they went out, was it a couple of seasons ago? So yeah, it really sets things up really nicely.
Yeah, and it's not a free hit, but it sort of has the feel of a free hit to go to PSG and go, right, go out there and win, and it would be a massive statement. Look, at last, players get injured, right? But we'd be quite critical of Newcastle in their Premier League, and yet you sort of think if Wisser had been fit from the start of the season, they might have, 6 more points, and then they would be 4th in the Premier League. He is clearly, like, the way they want to press, he's great at doing that.
Yeah, and it's just the general disruption they had at the start of the season with the Isak saga dragging on for as long as it did, and you go into the season with your striker situation not settled, and then Wissa gets injured, and you're right. They only won 1 of their first 6 games in the Premier League, and the league table, they're 8th, which doesn't seem great, but it's still so tight. So like 6 more points, they would have been 4th, or 6 or 7 more points, that would have been good. So I guess there's something there, which is, I think in general clubs are more aware of than they used to, but the importance of actually getting business done early-ish in the summer, and then trying to go into, because those first games of the season, you can't just go into August and say, yeah, we're almost there. Like, we have a few moves that should happen, and then it'll be fine. But if the points you drop early on cost you as much as the ones you drop in April, So I think they maybe suffered a little bit from the fact that the Isak saga dragged out as much as it did. And when everyone's fit, they're very, very and ready. They're a very different team.
Yeah, Harvey Barnes, every time I see him, he seems to score like a goal that makes him look like a brilliant footballer. I'm fascinated to see if Scotland take him to the World Cup. And Lewis Hall, I thought, was really good again. And that is a open position in the England team, I think. And I think Lewis Hall could make a name for himself there. PSV fans took over Pop World Newcastle in the afternoon and looked like they were having a lovely time. Now, I don't really know what Pop World is. I can sort of hazard a guess, but does anybody
This is
know?
the Simon Amstel, Makita Oliver. So did PSV fans take over T4 on a Saturday morning and undertake arch interviews with unsuspecting American pop stars?
I would listen to that.
Yeah, it's a show. You got yourself a show.
That was good. Pop World was good fun. Apparently, it's a nightclub chain, a la Vodka Revolution. That's far less interesting. I thought it was some sort of karaoke type affair where they sang, pop hits from the night. They sang Bewitched songs, or hang on, probably like Donna Air songs. Just Geordie, PJ and Duncan, and Donna Air songs are the only things they're allowed to sing in Pop World. If I had my way. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Chelsea 1, Pafos 0. Can somebody give a more interesting review of the game than the game was itself? Paul, sorry to throw you this hospital pass.
No, I mean, I guess I was watching this slightly from a minnow-centric angle, but I do think huge credit to Pafos here, and specifically their goalkeeper, who is one of those goalkeepers who always has to be called by both names, Jay Gorter. So you kind of hear him get called Jay Gorter every time, and you're like, is that his surname? Is he someone Jay Gorter? But no, Jay Gorter, the Dutch keeper, made, I mean, I don't know how many saves it was. It was somewhere between 50 and 70 saves. But for all that, Chelsea didn't look massively dangerous for quite a lot of the game, considering, you'd expect them to come and win this one fairly easily. But just for the scale of comparison, Pafos is, I think their entire squad is worth about 26 million. So the disparity between the two teams is just absolutely enormous. And Pafos having this kind of incredible rise. They've only existed in this form for 11 years. They were like the merger between two other clubs, and they've kind of shot to their first league title in 2024-25. And yeah, it was an amazing effort from a Pafos perspective. From a Chelsea perspective, one of the most frustrating games you could probably wish to see. And until that that goal, I think it was Casido in the 78th minute. Until that point, it looked quite possible Pafos would grab a point, which I think would have left Chelsea fans pretty livid, really, given the balance of the game and the expectation. But I do just think, we have to pay a huge amount of credit to Pafos. They came to try and pull that off an incredibly unlikely point, and they almost got it.
Yeah. What Johnny, have you made of Liam Rosenior so far?
Yeah, I mean, well, what we've learned is that I think he likes to pronounce it Liam Rosenior, which I don't think I'll be doing that.
No, I think he said he wants. I think his dad said it's Rosenior, and he said actually just call me Rosenior. That's what I've.
Yeah,
heard,
it's not.
maybe...
I'm sorry. I mean, I know it's their name, but it's not actually up to them. It's a bit like when N'Golo Kante joined Chelsea, and obviously his name is Conte, but they were managed by a Conte. So sorry, mate, you're Kante. We're going to call you Kante. I don't think we can bank on Rosenior seeing out the season. I don't think the fans are having him. I think he needs a run of wins, and he needs a kind of a swell of goodwill that he's not. I don't think he's necessarily going to get. He doesn't. He starts, unlike a lot of his predecessors. I think he starts from a position of weakness, which is it's a shame. It's no shade on him as a coach. I think he's clearly a very bright coach with ideas and who has earned this chance. I just think the knives are out for him a little bit. You can see that there's an itchy finger on the trigger. People want to ridicule him. People want to sort of I think pick holes in him. I think there is a narrative being built already that the job is a little bit too big for him. And look, this was not a great performance, but I thought Liam Delap's struggled up front. They didn't really have any kind of space to play in. They didn't really have too much invention. Pafos basically kind of a 5-4-1 off the ball. But you kind of, if you have the talent that Chelsea have, you can get Gittins off the bench. You can replace Reece James with Estevao at half time. That injected a little bit of energy into them. But they were 12 minutes away. Pafos were 12 minutes away from claiming a famous point ultimately. So they're really starting to kind of tug on the heartstrings. You began to feel a real sort of overwrought, effective, almost a dramatic sadness for them. Oh, sorry, that's pathos, isn't it?
Oh, very nice. It's
the thing is, you got to take these low XG shots.
No. Lars, the thing is, it's not the first time Johnny's done a good joke, and I've been concentrating on something else, like what I'm going to ask you next, and I haven't been doing what I should be doing, is listening intently to the intelligent joke and getting it before Johnny has to explain it. But I just think not the first time he's been met with that reaction. My apologies.
I mean, a lot of us worried
Pathos sounds like pathos.
A lot of us worried that because there's so much talk of XG in the game now, people are not encouraged to take on like difficult shots and like long shots, and wonder goals are essentially going to die out. I think the same is true with podcasts. We have to encourage the creative players to really go for these sort of low XG jokes, and maybe
But I actually think the XG on that is actually quite high. It was just, it's just the audience. He just needed a better audience. Is what I think. Sure, like Rosenior needs more time, Lars. Clearly, and there's the Chelsea squad we've talked about this before. It's a hard one to work out. So if you just wandered in there, you need like time to work out who you like and who you don't like, and what your bomb squad is, and what who's going to play where.
It's such an odd cultural fit, I feel, and I wonder if this matters, because on paper they have quite a young, ambitious squad, so maybe a young manager is good. Maybe he will find a good sort of common ground with that group of players. But there's something about like the vibe of Chelsea. This is sort of the house that JT built. for better or worse. This is a fan base who are used to like strong, rugged men who kick the ball very far and elbow people in the head first and ask questions later. And you're used to having like Mourinho on the touchline, like this sort of roaming war criminal in a football sense, just kind of always causing aggro. And I'm not sure if they're sort of culturally set up to accept an intelligent, softly spoken, well-meaning coach with fresh ideas. I think he's going to, and this shouldn't matter, but I feel like it ends up mattering. Like the vibes matter. And I think it's very, very important that he gets some early wins to get them on side, rightly or wrongly. And I also just wonder, my sense that there is a increasing resistance among the Chelsea fan base to their own ownership, to the Blueco lads, to Egbali and Bowley and the boys and their whole methodology. Sure. And I'm not sure it helps Rosignor that he's so clearly the company man in here, that he's sort of the Blueco golden child who's been parachuted in with all his LinkedIn speech and all his sort of clever ideas. This seems like the opposite of what a lot of Chelsea fans want. And again, shouldn't matter to him in terms of him just trying to do his job. But I feel like it gives him less leeway to screw up. And I think it's very, very important that he gets a lot of results very quickly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I say there was a paradox in that Chelsea keep wanting these young, principled, ideological, no compromise coaches. And the reason it so rarely works is that going to Chelsea is, in a sense, the first compromise.
Yeah. So what does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, it means they're trying to attract a kind of coach which is completely anathema to the culture of the club. But they keep hiring them anyway. You saw it with Potter.
That sounds like a motivational quote in itself. Going to Chelsea is the first compromise. That sounds like something you put on LinkedIn.
It's a tea towel. You're saying that's a tea towel? Is what it is. It's what you have on a breadboard. Anyway, we'll see how he gets on. And he's actually, he only lost one? He lost the Arsenal game, but otherwise, he's won all his other games, even if they've looked a bit streaky. Elsewhere, Qarabag. Big win for Qarabag here, Paul, wasn't it? Limbs in the last minute.
Yeah, it was. It really was. It didn't look at all likely. They were 2-1 down to Eintracht Frankfurt at one point, turned it around with a last gasp goal from a name that I'm going to actually butcher, Belul Mustafadzadeh. I'll try again. He's called Belul Mustafadzadeh, I think. Mm-hmm. But I apologise to our listeners who understand that name better than I do. But first Azerbaijani player to score in the competition, which is quite an amazing thing. It's not that they hadn't been scoring goals, it's just they've mostly been coming from Camilo Duran, who's Colombian. But yeah, this was a remarkable achievement. And I think Qarabag are the surprise package of this whole, this whole phase, and the fact that they are now well poised to get a playoff place is an amazing achievement, really, for them. I think they've been written off by a lot of teams. One thing that I think people, maybe one of the reasons they're underestimated is people don't realise just how many European games they've played. I think it comes from being in a league where they can dominate for quite a few years. They've played so much European football, so they're not kind of fresh-faced newcomers in that sense. But this is definitely new territory for them. And the scenes at the final whistle, the scenes after that goal went in the 93rd minute were
it was so good,
brilliant to watch. Weren't they? That's what it is all about, really.
I won 4-2 at Slavia Prague. What did you make of their win, Lars?
Just that it was very typical of this Barcelona, which is that they the goal, they conceded 2 set-piece goals. And there are always moments, I mean, caveats here being that it was very, very cold in Prague. It was like minus a lot, and the pitch was apparently not very good, and it wasn't ideal condition for the Catalan magicians, as it were. But they conceded 2 set-piece goals, and they do just like, again, because they play with this they play with a high, they're very attacking, they play with a high line, and you just kind of feel this can always go wrong, and at any moment this can go completely wrong. But there's so much attacking talent in this team that they will. And it was Fermin Lopez, who's sort of one of the lesser celebrated guys in that group, and I would argue that he might be. There's a case to be made that he should be striking up out on his own because he's a great player, and he's probably never going to be a regular at Barcelona. But maybe he's happy being a squad player there. I don't know. He scored 2 good goals, and Dani Olmo's third goal was absolutely brilliant. And yeah, there's so much. I still wonder. The thing with Barcelona, you look at them and you think this is so much fun and it's so brounced. They will probably get trounced at some point by one of the other big teams. But in the meantime, like at least I want, if we're gonna have these sort of Galactico super clubs that have more money than everyone else and blah blah blah, at least let them be fun. So I mean, they're always watchable. Like Barcelona under Flick right now, they're never boring, never. It's always good fun.
Bayern beat Union Saint-Gilloise 2-0. Johnny, Harry Kane missed a penalty. If we're not boycotting the World Cup, panic. Maybe we should boycott now. He's missed that penalty. Just too much terror seeing him.
Well, he misses
one.
about once a year.
Yeah,
he misses about once a year. Maybe that's it's January the 22nd. He's already got his one penalty miss for the year out of the way. Maybe we can all relax easy now.
Yeah, hopefully. Do you see them as we were yesterday trying to work out who are the real opponents to Arsenal in this competition? Or is it is that daft to suggest, because you can be really good in January and not really good in May, but I know they have beaten Bayern, but like Bayern must be considered one of the teams that could beat them over two legs.
Oh, definitely Bayern. Bayern have been superb. I mean, domestically, they've almost got the Bundesliga sewn up. You can argue whether that's going to help them, but I think it does help them in terms of the fact that from March, April, they can really fully focus on a competition they almost kind of regard as their birthright in a way. That's where coaches ultimately get judged. Company has done a superb job. They are delighted with the job that Company has done at Bayern, and I think there's a really lovely balance to them. They can win games in lots of different ways. They weren't great against Union Saint-Gilloise, but they managed to grind it out. They can get results against good teams, and they can really splatter the smaller ones. So I'm really excited to see what they do in the second half of the season, because I think Company's got a really good thing going there.
Elsewhere, Juventus beat Benfica 2-0. Weston McKennie's goal was lovely. Interplay with him and was it Jonathan David? I think, I'm not sure. Athletic Bilbao, good comeback from them at Atalanta. Galatasaray Atletico was a 1-1 draw. Unless anyone has any strong views on those games, I might come to you, Lars, on... Oh, yes, Paul.
I was going to say, we have to give a mention, surely, for the penalty slip from Pavlidis.
Yes.
I've rarely seen a penalty go as wide as Pavlidis' penalty for Benfica, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of those ones as well. They're 2-0 down, I think, at that point. The commentator even says, it's a lifeline for Benfica. You couldn't have set it up better for what is the most dramatic penalty slip I've seen in some time. I mean, where did that ball even end up? The camera couldn't even track it, could it, really? It was just...
Yeah,
it's really fun, isn't it? It sort of feels like Waddle. I mean, I know Waddle's probably wasn't that far away, but it has that Waddle vibe, doesn't it?
I don't even know where it went. It's just watching the goal, and it's almost something so comic about it.
Yeah, because what happens is the standing foot slips and then pushes the ball slightly to the right, which means that when the right foot comes swinging, it hits the completely wrong area of the ball entirely, and it goes directly to the right. It made me almost feel sorry for Jose Mourinho, which is a very high bar in general, because actually Benfica were not terrible in this game, and I think for him, given his history in Italian football, going to Juventus is always going to be like a big thing. I mean, I'm sure he really wanted that, even more so than coaches usually want something. And they were not bad in this game, and they just kind of needed something to drop for them, and then that happens. It's not good.
I think it was almost a whole goal. I think if there was another goal next to that goal, it wouldn't have gone in. That's how wide it is. Yeah, no. Thank you for bringing it to everyone.
Was it a throw-in? It could have been a throw-in.
It's definitely a goal. It's definitely a goal kick. So Lars, let's have a minute on Bodo Glimt. We talked about it yesterday, but you are in Norway currently. You are a Norwegian. Yeah. This is a big moment.
It is. It's either the biggest or the second biggest result in Norwegian club football history. I think the consensus is. It is Rosenborg winning away to Milan in '96 to qualify from the group stage back then. Some people will probably hold even higher, but that might just be nostalgia. I don't know. I think beating the Abu Dhabi's Manchester City, albeit with a few defensive absentees, is unbelievable. And there's a lot of good aspects of this, but I thought one thing that might be underappreciated by neutral observers is that Bodo Glimt don't usually play like this. Like, they're usually the sort of Man City characters in Norway. They're the possession team that will try to pass everyone to death and just be patient with the ball and all that. Whereas in this game, I mean, Kjetil Knutsen said after the game, we ended up, having to drop deep in a way because you're playing City. Clearly, you have to do that. But they were able to master a way of playing, of sitting quite deep and hitting people on the counter, which is very different to what they do the game week in, week out domestically. And it's a sort of tactical flick of the switch that I guess the dominant teams in smaller leagues have to do when they go out into Europe. It's more obviously the point that needs to be made is that they aren't out of season. They're not. The Norwegian domestic season doesn't start for a while yet. We have a summer league for obvious reasons. It wouldn't be feasible to play league football in the winter here. So they haven't played a proper game since the last time the Champions League came around. Like and you have to do training camps. They should be like not match fit or in any kind of rhythm whatsoever. But they looked so sharp, and I was so impressed by them. It was their first win in the group stage because they've had a couple of games where they've played really well. But what you find against these opponents is that there's so much individual quality that if you lose your focus for like a second, then that can turn the game around. And for a very long time watching it, I still kind of thought at 2-0, like, okay, they're going to get tired and they'll get done in the end. I think the red card for Rodri really helped because I think there's probably a world in which they tire a little bit because they're not super match fit and stuff. But by then City had 10 men, so you had a huge advantage in the end. And no, it was an extraordinary, joyous occasion. And I don't really have any sympathy for any complaints about the surface because just fundamentally, City's wage bill is around 400 million and Bodø/Glimt's is around 20 million. So let's not whine about the surface.
Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So Super Sunday, Arsenal, Manchester United. Michael Carrick's had the squad for a week since that win over Manchester City. Benefit of not being in any European competitions. What chance do you give them, Johnny?
A puncher's chance, I guess. I mean, I think because of the feelings and the good vibes around Carrick's start at Manchester United, I think a lot of people would be quite optimistic, and certainly Arsenal fans that I know. I live literally just around the corner from the Emirates, so I'm literally surrounded by Arsenal fans. So it's a pretty good way to take the temperature. And they're all really worried about Carrick, United are going to do us. They suddenly look really good. Typical, United raising their game against us. I think if we put things into perspective, Arsenal still should win that. I mean, they're at home. They have a depth of squad. That they have options off the bench that you would trust them to see out any game against any opposition in the world currently. And also I just think that as long as they're not too vulnerable on the transition, as long as they manage to keep United quiet on the transition, I don't think this iteration of United can do a huge amount to hurt them. I think if Arsenal pack the midfield, if they dominate the midfield like they do pretty much against any other team, I think United will be reduced to really quite a few chances. So I think United obviously have a chance because of the talent that they've got and because of the little mini wave of momentum they've got right now. But I think it is no more than a puncher's chance for them.
On behalf of all the non-native English speakers, how would we define like a puncher's chance in terms of percentages? Because it's one of those phrases I don't really.
Oh, right. But it's basically like a shit boxer against a good boxer. But,
okay.
You've still got a pair of fists and you're still a boxer. So,
okay.
You can get a lucky punch through and knock the guy out.
Okay, that's fair. Like that.
The Athletic are reporting that Manchester United are in talks to make a big-budget historical drama series similar to The Crown. Jed Mercurio, Line of Duty creator, apparently on board. Of course, the nostalgia. There's just so much DNA and nostalgia just oozing out of Old Trafford. Dream cast list. Andy Jacobs and I did this on TalkSport, and the listeners came up with Fergie, played by David Tennant, a young Fergie, and then Brian Cox, an old Fergie. I think Brian Cox would be very good.
Yeah.
Toby Jones as Paul Scholes. Steve Bruce, played by Pauline Quirk. Diego Forlan, Jennifer Lawrence, and Paul Ince, The Rock. Really good.
I like
yes.
Dame Maggie Smith as David Moyes. I think there's something there.
Yeah, well, Noradine Chowdhury, our mate, did a whole guest. He had Hugh Laurie as David Moyes. Carlos Queiroz, played by Sanjeev Bhaskar. He had Ewan McGregor as Sir Alex Ferguson. And what else does he have? Thomas Turgoose as Wayne Rooney. Jodie Comer as Colleen Rooney. Stephen Merchant as Gary Pallister is quite good fun, isn't it? And well, he put. I had Eric Cantona playing Eric Cantona. I thought that could work, right? He's allowed to act unless he wants to play another Manchester United character.
No, Cantona
And,
plays Giggs.
You think Cantona plays Giggs? Okay. He did have Robert Downey Jr. Playing Mourinho, and Tilda Swinton as Arsene Wenger is good, isn't it? So thank you, Lars. Man City Wolves. Is this? I mean, you sort of think, Paul, given they've had 2 defeats in a row, a bad one, City. And Wolves have a bit of form. It's too far-fetched to suggest Wolves getting something out of this game, is it?
I mean, Wolves have a bit of form is a statement we didn't expect to hear, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, they've looked a lot better lately, Wolves. I think this is surely a step too far, and we're about to see some sort of normality reinstated here. But kind of amazing that Rob Edwards seems to be doing something with Wolves, more than just limiting his commute. He seems to actually have found a way to get them playing some football. And there's a possibility Wolves will do a kind of great escape attempt that will fall heroically short. I mean, there's no realistic way they can possibly get themselves out of this. But it's actually become pretty interesting. I thought this was going to be a foregone conclusion. I actually had my eyes on, were they going to get the lowest points total? That was the exciting drama. But actually, the way they've been playing, it shouldn't theoretically be impossible for them to upset a now in crisis Man City. But no, I don't see it happening, to be honest.
I've been on the other boat to poll this. I've never thought Wolves were going to get the lowest points total. I have been curious about whether they will end up overtaking Burnley, because I think Burnley are worse. Like, based on the games I've seen this season, I genuinely think Wolves are a better team than Burnley. Now, they're 6 points behind now. I mean, they are both going down. I don't see any version of this where that doesn't happen. But I think the drama down the bottom, can Wolves mount a heroic? I mean, probably if you're Rob Edwards, probably that's something you tell the players. Like, we can not finish last here. It can be done. One thing I'm wondering about this game is whether Guardiola will rest Erling Haaland at some point, because the boy is looking tired. Now, I think it's difficult because I think he hates it himself. I don't think he likes being rested. I think that's really not something. But I was very surprised to see that he started against Bodø Glimt, because I thought when the fixture list falls this way and you have Bodø Glimt and then Wolves, that's a good week to tell Erling, listen, you've got a nice house down in Costa del Sol. We can invent a hamstring injury if you want or something. Like, just take a week off. Like, we're not, like, you need to, because he has looked really, really spent the last couple of weeks. Marmoush is back from the AFCON. They paid a lot of money for him. Presumably, he should be able to play up front at some point. I do think. Having said that, Erling will probably score a hat-trick, because that seems to be what he does. But I think he could use a break for this one.
Johnny, Lars has very confidently said Wolves might finish, or certainly that Burnley are going down. But Burnley, 13 without a win, do host Dr. Tottenham. And, like, you can see it. I mean, you can see it, Johnny. I don't know how you feel. We were all certain Frank was sacked on Monday. Then yesterday, obviously, he'd had a really good result against Dortmund on Tuesday and seems safe for now. But he surely has to win this one.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Spurs, look, good or passable in the Champions League, and this goes back to what we were talking at the top of the show about, is the standard in the Champions League actually flattering Premier League teams a little bit, because it's almost as if the competition in domestically is stronger or more competitive than what they're getting on the continent. I don't put Burnley in that category. I think if Tottenham don't win, I think Frank goes pretty much immediately. I think even if they do win, he may well go in the short term. This feels like the manoeuvring period where they are, Spurs are trying to line up or potentially lining up someone to replace him, and almost sort of hoping hoping that results don't throw a spanner in the works. I do think Spurs will be. Spurs have actually they've been all right away from home. This is the sort of game that they have been performing okay in, or at least getting results. Burnley will have to, we saw against United that they are able to frustrate a team. They're able to frustrate teams, but they do need a huge amount of luck to be able to cling on to anything.
Palace, Chelsea, West Ham, Sunderland, Newcastle, Villa, Fulham, Brighton, Bournemouth, Liverpool, Brentford, Forest, and Everton. Leeds is on Monday nights. Paul, I wanted to talk to you about Greenland. I mean, I doubt football is at the top of their priorities, but it's sort of quite interesting football is a part of life. And, when Donald Trump is on stage just calling it a piece of ice yesterday, there are actual humans there who do things such as play football. And you've talked to us a bit about football in Greenland before. So I just wanted you to sort of remind us, because Greenland wanted to trying to join UEFA or were thinking about joining CONCACAF, were they?
Yeah, so I mean, football in Greenland is like this incredible tale of kind of making football happen against adversity. So Greenland has a national championships, and it's in 1 week of the year where it's basically warm enough to play outside, and teams come from all over Greenland, and there's no roads in Greenland between the big settlements, so they all have to either fly, which is incredibly expensive, or get dangerous boat trips, and they all congregate for this 1 week in August where they have a national championships. And so Greenland's had decent football scene for a long time. It has a national team that go out and try and play games against other teams. But against the backdrop of this, they've seen the Faroe Islands, which has exactly the same status politically as part of the Kingdom of Denmark, go and get into UEFA. Greenland just never applied to UEFA at the time that Faroes did. So they never actually made a formal application. Then UEFA quite, firmly shut the door to non-sovereign nations. Gibraltar managed to kick that door open because they'd already applied before that came in. So Gibraltar said, well, look, we're going to go to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, succeeded and got in. But Greenland couldn't do the same because they had never actually applied. So the thinking in Greenland was, well, let's go to CONCACAF. Like that's our, geographically, that's a logical fit for us, even though UEFA made a lot more sense in many ways, more culturally, because of, the strong links to Denmark. So they went to CONCACAF. And what was kind of weird was that Greenland started to get very fast apparent progress within CONCACAF. They got invited to this meeting in Miami. Very, very kind of suddenly was told, like, come to Miami, we're going to have a meeting with you. And this was some quite senior figures within CONCACAF saying, come and meet people. And there was a sense that Greenland was almost being fast-tracked into something that had, spent years sitting fairly dormant. And there were really high hopes building. Greenland put together this application and thought, well, this is going to be our moment. They applied to join CONCACAF formally, which then goes to a vote of the members at their Congress. And there was this huge wave of enthusiasm. People in Greenland were saying, this is it, this is our moment. We're going to at least get a kind of timeline to joining CONCACAF here. And what actually happened was they were unanimously rejected. Every single member of CONCACAF voted against Greenland. And that left this clear impression that Greenland had, that, there'd been a very strong lobbying force against Greenland. And if you think about it, the strongest lobbying force in CONCACAF is undoubtedly the USA. So there was a sense that they'd been led on and then kind of cast aside.
When was this?
This was all earlier. Well, this was last year. So this happened last year. And it kind of sent a shockwave through people in Greenland because they'd been given very strong kind of signals that this was something that was going to work, that there was going to be a time scale, there was going to be some help. And instead they were just told, no, you are absolutely not going to be a member of CONCACAF. There is a right to appeal, but, that's not really going to work either because you're appealing to the same people. So it was a very mysterious thing, but it's left Greenland completely out, frozen out of anywhere, for want of a better phrase. And it leaves them with nowhere to go. UEFA's door is closed very definitively. CONCACAF has said no to them. So what exactly would anyone have them do? They are trapped outside of international football.
Right. So can they play games?
They can summon friendlies up. They actually played a couple of friendlies last year. They've played games here and there. They played against Turkmenistan, funnily enough, in a friendly. They might have sort of pair up with them at a training camp in Turkey and played a friendly against them. But really, their options are incredibly limited. And because it's all political, I think the only thing they can really do is really try and build alliances within other CONCACAF member states. But that can be quite tricky because those states are generally all within the Caribbean, or a lot of them are within the Caribbean.
Of course, yeah.
And there's a linguistic barrier too, with most of the Greenland FA speaking Danish, but not necessarily English that confidently. So it's a very long and difficult road for Greenland. But the sadness is there is thriving football there. There is a very proud footballing community who want to represent Greenland internationally. And that just seems to be denied to them. They seem to have, again, in football terms, something was being done that involved them being used as a pawn, and no one's quite sure what it was, but they were clearly led on and then cast adrift.
Come on, UEFA. Open your doors. Let him in, is what I say. I don't have a lot of power in football, I don't believe. But, when I run football, that will be number one on the agenda. Thanks, Paul. That's really interesting. Finally, an email from Alan who says, my mate Jimmy died a few weeks ago, just before Christmas. He was a great fan of the pod. It was one of the things that we had in common. We met and worked for over 20 years in Lima, Peru, played football together, traveled together, were surrounded by machine gun-toting soldiers who mistook us for terrorists together, and many other innocent adventures. He returned to Glasgow a few years ago and eventually died at 61. Too young for him and his family, but perhaps an average life expectancy for an adventurous Glaswegian, Alan says. I haven't seen him in a few years, but I miss him, particularly when I listen to this podcast, because I know he was such a great fan and it was one of the things we would always chat about. So I don't know if you could find it in you to give a shout out to him up there in heaven where he belongs, if that's where he made it. I know it would be a laugh and he'd be happy and I would be too. Thanks for the show. I've been listening almost from the beginning. I can't actually imagine it not being around. Cheers, Alan. Thank you, Alan. We appreciate you and we appreciate Jimmy, and we send you and his family our love, and appreciate everyone who still listens to us waffle on about football 3 times a week. But thank you, Alan, for getting in touch. Football Weekly @theguardian.com if you want to send us an email, but that'll do for today.